Stay tuned into the HBCU Sports Lab, which I compete with Mike and
Welcome to episode 82 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that is covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports institutions large and small, from NAIA to NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-hosts, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, better known as Professor Washington and Professor Bishop. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our Caseways 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, in beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. With that, let me shout out to the gentlemen. That's Professor Bishop and Professor Washington. Let me start with Professor Bishop. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dr. DeVille. Couldn't wait to get ready for another episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We have a lot of stuff to get to. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we do have a lot on our plate today, and so we're going to bring it to the lab. I see that you wanted to represent a little bit with Jackson State University.
Yeah, I just, I played in.
We trying to play a little homage to Southern, and you just can't do it.
I feel you, and I feel you guys today on the homage to Southern, but my personal ethos just won't allow to put on anything that says Southern. But I definitely wanted to send a shout out. Played in A.D. Ashley Robinson's golf tournament this past weekend. A tremendous time was had by all. They raised a lot of money for Jackson State Athletics. So wanted to send a shout out to all those people back there in Jackson. They put on a tremendous golf tournament.
Well said, I guess. Well said. Well, we know what he's doing today. Crashing a party. Which one of these people are doing their own thing? I'm not going to say any names. Maybe Professor Bishop. Professor Washington, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How you doing, Doc?
Looking good. I see you have the Jaguar hat on today, and I know for you, just as much as it's a challenge for Bishop, I know for you to put that on there, you probably took a little bit of a couple of years off the life to put that on. I know it was hard in the making, but you represented. Good job.
I appreciate it, but I reached down deep, and I mean reached down really deep to put this cap on. And this is less about Southern than it is about Mr. Lou Brock. It is another SWAC school, but to me, a childhood star, someone I looked up. I had his poster alongside Ricky Henderson's when I played baseball. So this is more about Lou Brock. No offense to all my Southern Jaguars out there, but yes, I had to dig deep to find this one.
Yes, you did, but you got it done. So kudos to you. With that said, today's show will be a good one. We will be joined with Hampton University's men's lacrosse coach, Chazz Woodson, to discuss lacrosse on the HBCU campus, specifically Hampton University, the only men's Division I lacrosse program that is out there. So we'll get to dig deep into that. And this is a prize opportunity for Mike Washington. His son plays lacrosse, and both of them actually, and one is actually playing at the collegiate level, or planning to play at the collegiate level this year. That may be a little harder with COVID-19, but we'll get into that a little more as well. But before we go too much further, just on this topic, I wanted to share before we got in there, and we'll ask you from news of the day, but I wanted to give a little perspective. I see the book is in the background. I appreciate that, Charles, but read a little something out of here if you would. In a combination, HBCU Game Day has done it again. But just wanted to say Southern's Lou Brock The left fielder for the Jaguars cemented his place in Jaguar baseball lore when he launched a 3-run home run over the outfield wall, sending Southern to an eventual 10-2 win and claim to the 1959 National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, better known to most of us as the NAIA National Championship, the first black institution, i.e. HBCU team, to ever earn such a title, and to this day is the only one to have earned that title in terms of the sport of baseball. Note, during this time of NAIA basketball championships run that started with Texas A&I, now Tennessee State, winning in 1957, 58, 59, it would be 20 years later before HBCU would earn a national championship in football, and it would be NCAA at the NCAA level by FAMU in 1979. I would like to add a footnote just from a historical perspective. Texas Southern and Prairie View A&M played in the first desegregated championship games in basketball in 1956 and football in 1963, respectively, just to give you some information there and what that looks like. And just to give you what took place during that decade, you think about what was taking place in 1959, HBCUs, or what I call the athletic renaissance, from 1940 to 1980, HBCU programs, and this is coming out of the text, the athletic experience historically black colleges and universities. I'll read this first paragraph quickly and then we can move forward. As HBCU programs were finally allowed to participate in the NAIA and NCAA, it created an HBCU renaissance period of national championships. Success that has not transpired at such a level since. For the first 20 years, 1953 to 1973 to be exact, that HBCU athletic programs and conferences housing HBCU athletic programs were allowed to participate in the NAIA basketball tournament. HBCU basketball programs produced 10 national champions, 8 Final Four teams, and 7 elite teams. HBCU athletic programs have also produced 18 NAIA national champions in other sports during this period, which includes, obviously, Howard University's soccer team in 1961. They actually won it in 63 as well. 61 it was vacated, but they came back. The redemption song that many people have seen with Spike Lee doing that update program on that historical moment. And then obviously none other than Southern University in terms of the baseball program that Lou Brock played on that you just heard, hit that 3-1 home run as they dominated the game. Again, that score was 10-2 as they got it done and won that game. So just wanted to give a little historical footnote since we were paying homage to Brock, and we'll get some more information in regards to what many people have read, his accolades at the Major League Baseball level. So let me jump to Mike and get your comments in regards to Lou Brock and his passing this week.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing the insight. You were reading over some of the stuff, and what you asked, what was going on in 1959. Here is a guy who was a Jackie Robinson Award winner, a Roberto Clemente Award winner, finished his career with 938 stolen bases, surpassed the great Ty Cobb, and only to have his record surpassed by Ricky Henderson, two people who I idolize. But people used to teach the art of stolen bases, if you've ever played baseball, by looking at his style, his technique, his leadoff, his takeoff, his sliding methods. So he was a pioneer, so to speak, in a lot of aspects of the game of baseball. He had a lifetime batting average of in the mid 290s, and that was performance enhancement free. So but he was truly a legend off the field as well. So a true ambassador of the game, and he deserves all his accolades. I was joking earlier, kudos to the Southern Jaguar family for producing such a tremendous talent that has been a model citizen and ideal character and ambassador for this sport. So those are just my thoughts on it, Doc and CB.
Certainly. Going to you, Charles Bishop, what are your thoughts on Lou Brock? I know you text some emotional thoughts on it, and that resonated with me in terms of historical lineage. Go ahead and tell others what that meant to you in regards to what came to mind.
Well, first and foremost, a tip of the cap to the Southern Jaguar family in terms of losing Mr. Lou Brock. I grew up in a baseball family, and my grandfather was a St. Louis Cardinal fan, and he was a Lou Brock man. And everything that I learned about baseball, my earliest memories of just learning about the game, it is through the prism of my granddad talking about Lou Brock being the quintessential leadoff man, and this is how you go about stealing the base. Just like Mike mentioned, over 900 some odd stolen bases. It was a classroom session, if you will, and it listened to my granddad, and it all had to do with talking about how Lou Brock played the game, how he ran out balls that were hit back to the pitcher, how he played hard, and he was tough, and he remembered him playing at Southern. So I just all those memories came running back for me when Lou Brock passed away, just in terms of my granddad talking about him and talking about the way he attacked the game, and that's how you should play baseball. He was his guy. He loved Lou Brock.
Yeah, that's appropriate. Like you said, I'll do that now. Tip of the cap
Yep.
to Lou Brock in regards to
And
his legendary status. Just wanted to give homage to him appropriately. I'm gonna stick with you, Mike Charles. Excuse me. Go back to you, Professor Bishop, in terms of what's some other news of the day as we get prepared for our interview with Coach shortly coming here.
Sure. Well, we also have another death, and this is a legendary figure as well. Dr. Kenyatta Starks, legendary Tennessee State golf coach. She passed Sunday at the age of 75. And Dr. Kenyatta Starks, she was a Tennessee State alumnus who became the first African American woman to coach an all men's team at the collegiate level. She will be remembered as a humble trailblazer whose legacy will live on in those she inspired. And interestingly enough, her story was turned into a made-for-TV movie starring Taraji P. Henson. But Dr. Kenyatta Starks, she led Tennessee State to the National Minority Golf Championship during her tenure there from 1986 to 2005. And during her time there, she also, one of her pupils was Sean Foley, who later became Tiger Woods' swing coach. So a tremendous legacy for Dr. Kenyatta Starks.
Thank you for sharing that. Certainly wanted to make sure that we had that information. Before we go to Coach Woodson, we got a couple of minutes here. Mike, another news update that you wanted to provide?
yeah, I'd like to switch gears if you don't mind. North Carolina A&T has surprised a lot of. Well, I don't know if it's a surprise by signing Zach Yeager from the state of Minnesota. There's a dual threat quarterback from Minneapolis, Minnesota, who has committed to North Carolina A&T. He does have some background in that his father played with Jay Walker, who is a host on ESPN. And this comes to us courtesy. I got to give HBCU Game Day. I also have to give kind of the Twitter box some love as well as the A&T folks also tweeted this as well. So this comes to us from a lot of sources. But this guy had, I think they said 20-something offers from the Ivy League. 12 offers from schools like, Colgate, Columbia, Fordham, Dartmouth. He was pursued by other HBCUs, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Tennessee State, Alcorn State, North Dakota State, and Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, also showed interest in Yeager. So kudos to North Carolina A&T on getting a dual threat quarterback in Yeager. We look for big things to come out of him as North Carolina A&T will move forward with his transition into another conference. But, so if you look at that, the timing of the offer, a couple of things kind of stand out as to why now. But solid pick, guy with a lot of offers. Congratulations to the North Carolina A&T family.
Yeah, great information there, Mike, in terms of that update. And I like the way you pronounced in such a way, Ithaca, New York. I thought you did a wonderful job in putting that.
you like that? I'm glad you caught that.
For those that know. Those that don't know, don't worry about it. But as we get ready to bring Coach Chazz Woodson on, I'd be remiss if I didn't take care of some home business on the home front. For those that are married or have significant others, you probably could relate to this. My wife is the president of the Houston chapter of Alabama A&M University, the National Alumni Association. And she said, and she wrote this script, so you all will know that. Charles and Mike, I have to do my shameless plug. The Houston chapter of Alabama A&M is wrapping up its summer scholarship fundraising campaign for a chance to win Microsoft Surface, Microsoft Xbox gaming console, a 200 Shell gas gift card. Text HOU Fun FUN 2020 to 406-302-5086. Again, text HOU Fun, that's HOUFUN 2020 to 406-302-5086. So I want to make sure I'm not on the couch this evening. So that's recorded. It's done. So I've done my blessings. And so, Coach, I hope you don't take that the wrong way. And we're coming to you right now. Understand you got to do the home front sometime and get it done. But welcome to the show, Coach. It is a pleasure to have you representing Hampton University as the head men's coach of the Lacrosse team, the only Division I HBCU program out there currently. A great history was made when they made the move. It got off, and now you have a chance to take this program certainly to the next level. So we're very happy to have you. How are you doing, Coach?
Thank you. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm well. I'm very well. Life is good.
So usually I take the mic from Mike because he likes to show out, but he did a great job of making sure that this interview took place, because I know you were doing some moving, and we had to move you around in terms of your time slot to make sure we can get you on. So we really appreciate your time in all seriousness. But I'm going to let Mike kind of jump off and lead this off in a lot of ways because he put in the hard work to land this particular interview. So go ahead, Mike, if you would. Start us off.
Yeah. Well, Coach Woodson, first of all, how are you doing as well? Thanks again on behalf of not only my co-host, but all of the fans that are listening live, listening via Facebook Live. Thanks for agreeing to come on the show.
Sure.
And
Thank you.
I definitely know it was tough. You've had a long road, so we have a lot of folks who are familiar with various HBCU sports. So I'll start it off by asking, explain to our audience in your own words, your passion behind lacrosse, how you found it, what it means to you, and how you with through your various careers are looking to kind of expand and grow this game.
Yeah. How much time do we have? I guess that's the real question. Because I could speak on this part of it forever. And I think there's a lot of different pieces to it. For me, I've been involved with the game as long as I can remember, as far back as I can remember. My father, who grew up in Brooklyn, was played 1 year. He was actually a football player. He went to Middlebury College to play football and was talked into playing lacrosse for a year at Middlebury by a couple of his teammates, and sort of fell in love with the game from there, and began to play, club ball, men's league after he graduated. He was actually out in California in the Air Force where he was born, or where I was born. And so I picked it up kind of from there. And I think the really unique piece of this whole story for me and this whole journey is that it's Hampton University ultimately that really puts me in this position to be the head coach. And I'll explain the story behind that. My aunt and uncle graduated from Hampton University back when it was Hampton Institute. And then they settled in Norfolk. And so when we got ready to move from California, Norfolk was one of the places that was in contention for that move, and it ultimately ended up being where we picked. I say we as if I had something to do with it, where my parents picked. And my aunt, Althea Robinson Woodson, Dr. Althea Robinson Woodson, was a professor at Virginia Wesleyan, which was right next door to Norfolk Academy. And so my dad was actually going over to see her, saw some guys on the field throwing the lacrosse ball around, stopped to talk to them, And, fast forward, that turned into a 15-plus year teaching and coaching career at Norfolk Academy, where I grew up learning to play lacrosse. And, that led me to Brown University and playing professionally and coaching and teaching. And here we are now with this opportunity in front of us. And I'm excited to be a part of this. For those that don't know, we are literally living somebody's dream. Hampton University lacrosse was an idea that Michael Crawford came up with. He was a student at the school and went home his senior year and passed away over winter break in his sleep. And his mom took the mantle and ran with it and made sure that his dream came to life. And so that became the Hampton University Club Lacrosse program, which then became the only Division I men's program. And so here we are. It's an honor and a pleasure, and certainly is something that I believe is part of the divine order of this whole situation.
Amen.
I certainly
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing for that history. Of course, Lloyd Carter, the great Lloyd Carter, was the first coach, and it matriculated to Rashad DeVoe and now to you. So I like
Sure.
your humility toward the game. At this point, I have a million questions, but I want to pass it over to my colleague Charles Bishop. And Charles, I know you had some questions you wanted to put on the table.
Yeah, Coach, and I wanted to kind of start off by asking the question. People are fairly familiar with recruiting within football and the other sports, if you will. But for lacrosse, where are kind of the hotbeds for lacrosse across this country?
Yeah, the hotbeds, the traditional hotbeds, I should say, are the Maryland area, the Upper East Coast, New York, Long Island, upstate New York, Jersey. Those are kind of the traditional hotbeds, and then you move into your Philly, your Denver. Parts of California are really big right now. Parts of Texas are big. Ohio. It's really growing and spreading tremendously throughout the country. And Canada is lacrosse rich. And so those are the typical hotbeds. But certainly from our perspective, we're going to recruit any and everywhere that we possibly can. And we want to get some guys from those traditional hotbeds, but we also want to be able to find the diamond in the rough and find the guy that's being overlooked, or the guy that's the late bloomer, the guy that is not quite there, or maybe not quite there with his stick skills, but athletically is 100% there. And maybe because of that, nobody's seen him, or he hasn't had the opportunity to play on a club team and travel around and pay thousands of dollars to do that all through high school, but he's that good still. So we're going to be everywhere looking.
What do you think is sort of fueling this growth of the game of lacrosse?
Well, I think it's a fun game to be a part of, right? And so when you look at the season that it's played in the spring, typically, scholastically, collegiately, it's played in the spring. So for a lot of kids, that's more fun than baseball. And I hate that, that's not a knock on baseball, but it's a little more active. It's more physical. For me, I grew up playing baseball. I was a baseball guy, T-balled in baseball, and then, picked up basketball and football as well. But when it came time to make the decision between baseball and lacrosse, it was lacrosse for me. And I think that's one part of it. It's just a fun game to be involved in. The other piece of it is, I think you've got a lot of people shying away from football now with the concussions and injuries and stuff like that. And so that's certainly factoring in, I think, a little bit into the growth of it. But it's a game that's been played in so many places for so long, but it just hadn't had the exposure. And that's one of the things that as lacrosse, we have to take to people. They're not just going to find it or just come across it. You can't just, let me rephrase that. Now it is on TV, and that I think has helped to fuel it as well. But, when I was coming up, you don't just turn on the TV and see a lacrosse game, whereas you do turn on the TV. You can find a basketball game, a football game, a baseball game any time of the year. So it's a little bit unique in that regard, but I think certainly those three things are the biggest catalysts for the growth.
Sure thing. Appreciate that.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Want to transition to you, Dr. Cavil?
Appreciate it, Mike. I want to get into a question, and you touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can go a little deeper dive, specifically in terms of minorities, specifically African Americans being at the HBCU. When you talk about the growth of lacrosse, I'm sure part of that growth is obviously a diversity in the game and people that play the game across the country. What do you foresee with getting athletes, particularly from the South, the West, kind of where we are in that region, Southwest, if you would, looking at Hampton University in lacrosse, for those that are participating in lacrosse, in a way that, as you said, grows the game with the passion that you had, the faith, and the excitement you saw in playing lacrosse. Talk about how does that look like besides coaching? Obviously, that's your number one, or I would guess is one of your main priorities is increasing Hampton University to participate at the Division I level. But besides that, as you're recruiting and try to increase that base, what does that look like in the totality of that picture?
Wow, there's a lot in that. That is a deeper dive. I think we have to look at this as an opportunity. Hampton University lacrosse specifically, I think, is an opportunity to really bring the game into other households and bring the game into communities that typically do not see themselves in the game. Not so much that lacrosse isn't there, but that the perception is that lacrosse is just this rich, private school white guy sport. And when in reality, if you look at the history of the game, which originates with the Native Americans, there have been phenomenal black players in every era of lacrosse. It's not a new thing. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the big picture. In fact, I've got a friend of mine is creating a documentary right now that's going to be phenomenal, really on the growth of black lacrosse and lacrosse in the black community. But in fact, I'm not even sure I was supposed to say that yet, but it's coming. And,
we won't
Side HBCU
right, you
Sports Lab.
heard it here first. You heard it here first. You just didn't hear it from me. But I think it's important, I think, one, we need to grow our program. So you talk about coaching being the priority. I believe that has to be the priority for me, because I've got to get this program to a place where it's a destination for black players.
I like that.
I'm not under any kind of, I understand that this is not, Hampton University is not the place for every student. It's not the place for every athlete, and it's not necessarily the place for every lacrosse player. But we want to get it to a point where it is a destination, a point where, they are, if a kid's being recruited by the University of Virginia and they're being recruited by Hopkins and Denver, that Hampton holds the same weight, at the very least from a lacrosse standpoint. Academically, those of us who know that Hampton is a great institution. But they also need to understand that, not only understand, but they need to see it. We have to get there for them to understand that playing lacrosse at Hampton is going to provide you the same opportunities on the field as any other big name program does. Once we can do that, then I think we will start to draw the top talent, but we'll also be able to position ourselves to showcase the game the right way. One of the programs I've been involved with for the last 4 or 5 years now is Nation United. And the agenda of Nation United was to promote diversity in the sport by showcasing diversity in the sport. And we did a phenomenal job with that, I think, and there's still more that could be done with it. But I think Hampton is kind of a piece of that puzzle. As we grow and as we become a little bit more successful, then others can see themselves doing it. Nobody wants to look at a program and say, yeah, I want to be a part of that because they're getting smacked by 20 goals every day. It doesn't matter who you are. Nobody wants to be a part of that, right? So once we kind of flip that script and we're doing the right thing, then we can talk about growing the game and expanding the game. I also think it's important for us as athletes and representatives, and I would say this no matter what institution I'm at, but I think at Hampton in particular, it's important for our guys to be role models and for our guys to be serving the community. So we are, in fact, I just had a conversation with the coach at Christopher Newport today about it. So we're going to be actively out in the community and doing what we can to give back and to serve. And hopefully that also helps to elevate the sport and the program, so that we're not just this niche sport out, on the fringes of athletics, but that we're a group of guys and a program and a team that's actually really invested in not just our own success, but the success of everybody around us.
No doubt about it.
Wow.
Before I get back to you, Mike, and let you continue the interview, I want to set it up. If you can hang on with us, Coach Woodson, for a short minute.
Sure.
We want to take a commercial break, and then we'll finish up the interview. This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, as we are with Hampton University men's Division I lacrosse head coach, Chazz Woodson. With that, we'll be right back with you. Hold in there, and we'll be right back. This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. After that commercial break, I'm going to hand it right back to you, Mike. Please proceed.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Doc. So, Coach Woodson, let me ask you a little bit about the program that you're about to take the reins over. In 2019, I believe you won 6-5. It was the first winning season in Hampton lacrosse history, and then you started 2020, had a tough start. But the schedule that Hampton was playing was a little arguably rougher or tougher in that they had more D1 opponents on the schedule than the previous year. So agreed to take on a tougher year. Now, fast forward, and we don't know when this COVID-19 thing is going to end. You're going to take over a program with some shiny new recruits. Most notably is Eris Brown, but you've also picked up a couple. How do you get this group, or what's your approach to getting this group of young stars or young future stars ready to play hardcore D1 ball with the likes of now some of the others that you face on the Northeast Coast or in the Midwest?
Sure, that's a great question, and I think it's an important question, and I'm glad that you gave the history of it. They did have that winning season, and that's a milestone. Right, that needed to happen. It was great for the program, but then you see as you take that next step up, things change, and we have to be very honest with ourselves as a program and as individual players, as coaches, about where we are and where we want to get to and what that requires. Playing a full-on Division I schedule, as much as everybody wants to do it, requires some change. It requires us to change the way we train, change the way we coach, change the way we recruit, and change the way we play. So it will be a process, and I don't expect that it's going to be an overnight. We're not going to be this overnight success story. It's going to take a few years before we get to where we want to be. But we are working toward that already. One of the things that we're doing is working from, especially right now, where our guys are not on campus this semester at all. So we're doing everything remotely. In the last few weeks, we've been working to nail down culture. Who are we? What are we going to be about as a team this year, but as a program long term? And I'm really proud of our guys. We came out of the last 3 weeks. And last Thursday, we're doing our team calls on Thursdays right now. And last Thursday, out of that call came the 5 pillars of Hampton University Lacrosse. And these are the core values that the guys came up with, through discussion about what this program is going to be about, who we are when we go to another school, what should programs see and feel, when they play us, when we speak to recruits, what do we tell them we are, who are we, and when these guys graduate and they come back, what are the standards that they want, or the core values that they hope that the guys are still upholding even in their absence. And so those 5 pillars for us are pride, respect, accountability, brotherhood, and toughness. And each one of those 5 has a different kind of definition and meaning. It has some of them have different meanings for each guy individually, but some of them might have a different meaning than you might think on the surface. Toughness, for example, was one that we kind of went back and forth on, and it came up after we thought we were finished figuring out what those core values were for the program. And but somebody said, it's not about showing up and being the guy that hits the hardest or being the guy that can run all day. It's also about dealing with adversity. It's about taking where we were and moving forward. It's about when something comes up in our lives that challenges us or shakes us to the guys, that one, fit the culture now that we've established it. 2, want to be at Hampton. I think that's important no matter what program you're in. We want guys that want to be there. If I'm talking to a recruit and I got to pull teeth to try to get out of him, that's probably not one of our guys, no matter how good he is. And it doesn't mean we're not going to recruit the best players that we can go after, but, they've got to be a fit, and we've got to be a fit for them. And then we got to get guys that can play at the Division I level. I think that's, to me, that's the toughest part about the recruiting game right now. And it has nothing to do with, the sport. It's really personal. It's tough to tell a kid, sorry, you're not Division I lacrosse ready, or you're not up to the caliber of a player that we want. But it's tougher, more specifically, to tell that to a black player who's been working and trying to get to this point and feels like Hampton is a great opportunity for him. Because I understand that. And I've had so many conversations like that over the years, and I've worked with so many of those kids and talked to so many of those families. And I realize that people see this as an opportunity for them that maybe they wouldn't get otherwise. But I also know that, as the coach of a Division I program, I have a responsibility to make sure that we're not just providing opportunities for any and everybody that wants to be there. They've got to be up to par. And so that, I think, is the toughest piece, but it's necessary and important in the context of your question. We've got to get Division I caliber lacrosse players, and it doesn't matter if they're black, white, Asian, other, whatever. We got to get the best talent that we can get and put it together so that we can have the best product on the field.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm looking at the time and our producers. So we want to take the opportunity to give you kind of one final word. You have a large audience here in the Southwest part of the United States, Texas especially, going all the way over to Mississippi and Georgia. Tell us, here's your chance. Please sell the program. Why Hampton? Tell us what you haven't included that you want us to know about Hampton University Lacrosse.
So first of all, shout out to all of my people in those areas. My parents are, if they're not listening live, they'll be listening on the replay down in Houston. I got family down here and everywhere else. So I have to shout them out. But I think Hampton, again, the university kind of sells itself. What I think I'm hoping for, is that Hampton University lacrosse can play a role in the change that's taking place throughout this country. and the conversation that's taking place throughout this country. And I think we can be a bright spot and a shining light and something positive among all the chaos that's going on. And I think we're a program that when we establish ourselves and we start to get the players that we want, I can promise we're going to play an up-tempo, fun brand of lacrosse that people will want to see and that people will want to be a part of. And once that happens, I think it's going to be a scary, scary sight for the lacrosse world. And that's really what I want to get to. But ultimately, we're creating a family and we're creating something that we want guys to be proud to be a part of. And this was one of the very first things that I said to the guys and to the parents. This is a family that they should be proud to be a part of 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now. They should be able to come back and say, I was a part of building that. They should be able to come back and say, I'm happy that guys have this opportunity now. They should be able to come back and be proud of the product that they see on the field and happy that they were a part of it. So, we're building the family, and I want everybody to be invited to be a part of this family. Doesn't matter what school you're at, Morehouse, Southern, Alcorn, anywhere else. You are part of this family and part of something that's bigger than the moment. And, we need your support.
All right. Thank you very much. So such passion, and I love it. Both my sons play lacrosse, and I wish they had it when I was in high school, the high school I attended. But thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. Like Dr. Cavil said, it's not often that he gives me the mic, so you blessed me in a couple of ways.
I appreciate it. You didn't have to land this interview. You got me. So I got you guys. So.
I like you, Coach. You got me on your team. But, yeah, you and Mike, I just don't know. Mike is now claiming he going to play lacrosse. He played football, and now every time somebody he said
if you got some eligibility left, come on through.
No, I'll send some money, but you're not finna make me look crazy out there.
Hey, listen, we got duct tape. We got duct tape to hold you together. We got bubble wrap, everything.
I'm gonna need it.
No doubt.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations. I look forward to it. You seem to be really passionate and good to get into it. So you should be great for the program and great for HBCU. So we appreciate you having it. Go Pirates.
Go Pirates.
This is Dr. Cavil inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. You heard us with our interview with Hampton University head men's basketball coach Chazz Woodson, as he is taking over the helm at Hampton University as the only HBCU Division I program. But you see, he has a lot of expectations of where he wants to take the program, and it's going to be exciting to watch it. And you certainly know you'll get that information here with us to talk about what's going on. I did want to give that update in terms of Luke Brock, as we kind of giving out information throughout the show, just honoring him in different ways. Some may not realize that when he won the championship with St. Louis Cardinals in 1964, obviously, he won it twice, 64 and 67, but he won it in 64. He became the first player from a historically black college university to win a World Series. We had a couple of them come back and win it afterwards. We have a couple of HBCU Hall of Famers, Major League Baseball Hall of Famers in that. But in regards to the first one, it's always something about being a first. 1964, he was the first player from a historically black college university to win a World Series, and that HBCU would be Southern University. Going to rep him today. With that, let's just jump back in there. He talked about a little social reform. We will get into the divisional breakdown because I know a lot of people are going to have some comments, and we'll shout people out on that information. But I did want to talk a little bit about the social framework and at least get your quick thoughts on this. Social justice movement, activism, boycotting, protests, how you want to look at it, several different framings. They do have nuances, but I won't get into that for this show. You can come check me out this Thursday, if you would, 9/10 at 2 o'clock Central Time. It's 3 o'clock Eastern, as I will be on a athletes and activism forum At the University of Florida, nothing new under the sun, athletes and protests in the U.S. Again, you can catch it on Zoom details and Zoom registration. I'll put that and flag it in our footnotes after the show. But you can register for this program. That's hhp.ufl.edu/athlete activism. Again, that's hhp.ufl.edu/athlete activism. To register, if you want to check me out, then I'll give you some more details in terms of how we're really going to talk about athlete activism from a HBCU perspective, so we are included in this conversation. So I appreciate my colleagues for giving me that opportunity. Social justice movement, as we said, activism, boycott, and protest. We've seen a lot of HBCU football programs and its juxtaposition with HBCU football programs, fall sports postponement. When you kind of look at this in terms of spaces, white spaces, black spaces, as institutional frameworks for associating with the sporting HBCU diaspora, as I like to call it, to actually look at social justice reform and its disposition with seeking reform in college athletics. Can you separate the two? Can you have athletes talking about, right, social justice reform outside of sports, athletics, but not necessarily have them look at how they could reform college athletics? You know, Power 5 institutions, should they be paid? We've entertained that conversation, so it's intriguing for me that you see in one space, and I think a little bit of that is the fact that they're forcing these athletes in a lot of ways to play. And some people say they have a choice. Yeah, woe is me. I don't want to hear that framework. This is my show, and I'm bringing that framework for me. So I speak for me in this framework. I'll let everybody else get a chance to type in and say their disposition on it. But just saying, when they are obligated, if you would allow me to use it from the other folks, it might be a little concerned if I push the other quote unquote narrative, as some people would say, is now they're talking about social movements. You've seen what happened with the Pac-12 and then the Big Ten. Ultimately, they canceled the fall season, but a lot of that was talking about how you should have more say from athletes, including ultimately up to being paid at that Power 5 level. Do you think you can separate college athletes fighting for social justice reform versus college athletic reform? Go with you first, Charles.
I think it's a nuanced sort of question. I mean, in terms of can you separate it? Yeah, you can, but I guess looking at the college athlete, he has so much more on the table, quote unquote, to lose in terms of being proactive with social justice reform. I think that's probably one of the arguments that you'll see a lot of people make in terms of why they aren't as proactive as they are when they actually have quite a bit of leverage. That's a tough one in terms of trying to look at how they go about separating it. And I'm sure, Dr. Cavil, there's multiple layers to it. So it's a tough question to kind of wrap my mind around right now.
So you need to be part of this symposium too. You need a whole hour to talk about this. But we're not gonna give you that. So I think you did a great job. Yeah, we gonna give you credit. You touched on it and played with them a little bit. Maybe we'll have a special segment off one of our regular Tuesday shows to take a deeper dive into this. Again, I'll get into it a little bit on Thursday, so we'll do it from a very academic perspective. But if you like that idea, tune in again. Check me out on that platform. With that, Mike, let me get into your thoughts to see whether you believe that you can separate the two.
As you were phrasing that question, I think physically you can make the attempt, but the question is, does it make sense? And I think it's a natural relationship. If you have social justice reform, but sooner or later you're going to come around to those athletes that are fighting for social justice reform. So at the end of the day, it's you can try and separate them, but does it really make sense and I think you end up having peanut butter and jelly. You can't have one without the other. Yeah, and to make a long story short, and as I look at the time, I think you need a whole hour or two to really unpack it. And I think there's some viable examples that show that you can try, but at the end of the day, you end up connecting the two because there's just too much of an inverse correlation between the two.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's why I said I think it's going to be fascinating in a lot of ways. Again, we're honoring Lou Brock. You've heard about his passing by now. Just wanted to give you this update. Brock played a total of 19 Major League Baseball seasons, including 16 seasons with the Cardinals. During his time in St. Louis, Brock finished in the top 25 of voting for the National League MVP for 6 straight seasons. Think about that. Obviously, he started his career with the Chicago Cubs before the club traded him to the Cardinals in the middle of the 1964 season. Can you think about the Cubs? Woe is the Cubs. Obviously, they finally won the championship, but historically, when you think about the Cubs in the division as well, it makes a lot of sense that they made that trade in terms of the historical nature of the Cubs.
Such a Cubby move.
But we'll leave those Cub fans out there, right? Yeah. You just so Cubs. But with that, let's get into this. And I'm going to start with you, Mike, on this. SWAC announced the division realignment starting in 21-22. Obviously, by now, unless you've been asleep at the wheel, you understand that SWAC is bringing in Bethune-Cookman University and FAMU, better known as Florida A&M University, in regards, and they will obviously be in the East. So that means one team needed to go to the West. We'll talk about whether it was Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State, or Alcorn State. Many people thought it was easily going to be either Mississippi Valley State and Alcorn State. A lot of people were pushing for Valley, some people for Alcorn. Some even pushed Jackson State out there. We snuck it in on the show several times to give you hints, but people couldn't catch it. Almost got Dr. Charles McCullough, the commissioner, to give it out on the show, but he gave you a hint and you still missed it. Well, some of you did. Talked about it, but it's none other than the Alcorn State Braves. Now, think about this, and obviously it's to get a little head in. I wanted to tease a little bit. Obviously, Northern Division, Coppin State, Delaware State, Howard State, Maryland, Eastern Shore, Morgan State, and Norfolk State will be obviously the teams in the MEAC leaving, and you add in South Carolina State. Or we can look at it currently as they had those first 6 teams I named in the Northern Division. Southern Division, you have Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, North Carolina A&T, North Carolina Central, South Carolina State. This is for the spring. But play along with me, if you would. Now you got in the SWAC, obviously, for 2021. And you have Alabama A&M, Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State. And in the West, you have Alcorn State, Grambling, Prairie View A&M, Southern Texas Southern, University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff. Of those 4 division frameworks, obviously a couple of those teams, one will be leaving in terms of the MEAC, and you see the other 2 coming to the SWAC East. But if you had to pick right now, in terms of looking at those 4 divisions, which of those 4 divisions is the toughest division in college sports? I'm going to go with Mike first and let Charles jump onto this because he's going to find a way to throw us off. So I'm going to go with Mike because his answer is probably going to be the easiest, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. You darn right my answer is going to be the West. The West is the best. You move the 6th time, I guess, for the last 5 or 6 years, they've come out of the East to the West, and then you already had Grambling, Southern, and Prairie View, who has shown glimpses of greatness. You put them all in the same division. You, by far, there is no other argument. That is by far the best side of the division. The West is the best. There is no beast in the East. There's glimpses, there's flashes, but the West is the best by far.
Go ahead, Charles. Jump in here. You see, Mike, he sold you on the West is the best. His chest is beating on his chest. He's out there. He's going to be excited until I'm going to come in there and play Prairie View. Then he's going to be like, man, I don't know about that. But go ahead, Charles. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I will say that the SWAC West is definitely going to be a monster. I mean, when you take a look at the Alcorn State's football program, they have been the flag bearer, if you will, in the SWAC East. And in the SWAC West, I'm glad you said that, Mike. Prairie View has shown glimpses, but it's been
Yep.
Grambling and Southern now for some time. So now they get a little bit of competition, if you will, and we don't have to kind of wait for the Bayou Classic to kind of find out how the West was won, if you will. So it should be very interesting in terms of Alcorn coming over. But I always take a look at it, guys. This thing is cyclical. Once was a time when SWAC East was pretty formidable, and then
True.
there was a time when Grambling was the SWAC West. They were the flag bearer for the SWAC West. So now Alcorn coming over should make things pretty interesting. Should be fun over there. Football wise, we'll see what happens with basketball and definitely baseball. I mean,
Yeah, that's
you
a
got Texas
that's a whole
Southern,
different.
and
Yeah, that's a
that's a
whole
whole
different
different
animal.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, we got a little time into that. Let's get into that now. We do got a lot of love of football, but we multi-talented people in here in regards to that. So sticking with you, Charles, since you brought it up, basketball, East, West, which is the strongest division in basketball?
I would say
Men.
that with Texas, with men's basketball, with Texas Southern and Prairie View in the SWAC West, they're the monsters in the SWAC West. Alcorn has to deal with that. I think Southern is back on the ascendancy again, if you will, in terms of being right there in the mix. So the SWAC West, it's a lot of tough teams, but I think if you kind of look over at the SWAC East, I think you're going to have some teams that they're ready to fight now. So this entire SWAC picture is starting to become very, very fun, and can't wait to get to 2021 in terms of looking at all the sports. I tell you what I'm extremely excited about, Dr. Cavil, is SWAC women's basketball. I mean, with the addition of Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman coming in, SWAC women's basketball is going to be really fun. So we can't forget about the totality of the program, because it's going to be.
I got you, Charles. You're actually right. We know you're a fan of Jack State women's basketball, rightfully so. They're playing really good, and they won in regular season. So, as we at the top of the side, we want to sneak this in. You don't have to go into your analytical framework. Men's basketball, we're going to do men's basketball, we're going to do women's basketball, we're going to do baseball. Right? We already talked
Mhm.
about football. Men's basketball, toughest division, East or West?
West.
Women's basketball, toughest division, East or West?
Still with the West, with Southern and Texas Southern fighting it out over there in the SWAC West. And then, Prairie View gets in the mix and over there at women's basketball as well.
I have to agree with you, and I can see why you paused. I think it's a lot closer, and I think you had some that could slightly maybe pull out the East, but I see where
Yeah.
you had to pause and really dig a little deep, and I had no problem with that. But baseball, East or West? It's a tough one here too.
That's a tough one with Bethune-Cookman and Jackson State and Alabama State in the East.
Yeah.
I would definitely go SWAC East with baseball.
Mike, as we run this down, if you can do just a little quicker. I know we teased out Charles, Professor Bishop. He was putting on his professorship hat there, and he was going into details. Basketball, men's basketball, East or West Division?
West.
Women's basketball, East or West Division? And I'll give you time to explain this one.
I'll stick with West because of Texas Southern glimpses of greatness by again Prairie View's women's basketball team. You do have a couple
Grambling.
of teams in the East that are starting to play well. Arguably Jackson State's women have really played really well. But you also had, Grambling's women starting to play well as well. So that's why I think the divide is, I think you said it, Doc, is shorter, but I still give the edge to the West for women's basketball.
No problem. Baseball. Give you a little moment to get in on this one too. This is fascinating.
I don't need a moment on this. It's the East.
He
It's the
said the
East.
East. Look at that. Go ahead. This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back for
Here,
some bonus coverage. We'll tune
I
off
can
as we
explain
tune
that.
off and going off of K2H studio, and we'll come back and give Mike a little more insight to explain some of the things and go back to Charles, let him get into it. But let us take this quick break as we are signing off of K2H 1230 with the Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball, So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that SWAC, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay, tune into the HBCU.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab show, bringing you back for a little bonus time here. Wanted to get into it a little more as we were talking about that East-West division. Looks like we got some folks out there talking a little bit. Dr. Cavil, Vina Washington, Kendrick Callis is on. A couple of other folks giving some shout out and love. Chuck Hunt, Dwight Moore, Jeremy Cheeks is in here. See, I should have known. He's an old rattler there. He got a teacher and a professor over in sport management, Dr. Jeremy Cheeks. He talking about FAMU. He got his little snake signals up here, symbols up here, I should say. Jimmy says the base fan, the group Charles couldn't wear a Cardinal cap. Charles was known as for losers for years, but it has changed after they won the 2016 World Championship. Chuck Hunt give us a little history. Yeah, you're right. It's changed just a little bit. Football in the SWAC West just got crazy. SWAC West is stronger. Charles, y'all still looking to hire a coach. So they want to know about your coach. Tell them you give him some time. It's coming.
Yeah,
Men's basketball belongs to the West. Unless you got some unless you have some little insight you want to sneak out, we give you that.
You heard it here.
I tell you what, it's going to be a heck of a search. So I'm looking forward to it myself.
You were down there at the golf tournament this weekend, so I know you got some information, but you're holding close to the vest. How about I just call you after the show, and I'll get some of that.
Of course.
AD on here.
The rumors are flying hot and heavy. I'll say it that way.
AD is joining us on here, checking us out, and as you see back in the image there, BCS Sports Rap with Brian and AD. Y'all check their show out regularly. They give great information. Dr. Jeremy C says, y'all know who we are everywhere. We everywhere. Them FAMU rattlers, boy, I tell you, they come in just, I don't know how long this is going to be a fun relationship. It's going to get ugly pretty quick. But with that, exactly. With that,
I would like to explain myself on the baseball thing, if you don't mind, because my compadres, Charles was looking at me when I said the East. So let me ask you a couple of questions. What team had the highest offense over the last 6 years, baseball wise? Highest team batting averages in the SWAC?
Probably Jackson State.
Alabama State.
Jackson State.
Who? Jackson State.
Jackson State.
Alabama State. Jackson State had the highest. And Alabama State had the second highest. The highest ERA, Alabama State. Who had the leading offense in the MEAC? Yes, you guessed
Probably
it.
Bethune-Cookman. Yeah.
Bethune-Cookman. So now you
Mm-hmm.
concentrate all that firepower in the East. Statistically, they are set up to be some really good offense. And the only pitching team that can match them is also in the East, because Alabama State is the only team over the last 5 years to average an earned ERA of in the low threes or below. The other team in the MEAC that did it was North Carolina A&T. They're going. So that's
But
why I say
Mike,
statistically,
I'm with you. But would we not say that the Southern baseball team is back?
yes, I will agree with you there.
Southern, man.
From a tournament standpoint, Texas
Yes.
Southern they have become the toughest out in the SWAC baseball tournament. And then we've seen even Grambling now with their offensive firepower. They'll take 2 or 3 from Texas Southern or Southern or whatever the case might be. But they have to get their pitching up to kind of everybody else in the SWAC West. But I feel you on the SWAC East, but you still got Southern and Texas Southern sitting over there in the SWAC West in terms of baseball. Both very, very formidable teams.
Yeah,
I want to get in a little bit on this because I don't think it's hard to talk about that in regards to the SWAC East and West Division. In regards to that, I'm gonna go with the East in a lot of ways too for baseball. You talk about FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. Without a question, we know those are both strong programs, especially Bethune-Cookman. You add in 2 strong programs in the East already with Jackson State and Alabama State. So you arguably have 4 strong programs. In the West, you have some of the strongest programs, especially of late, with winning championships most recently with Texas Southern and obviously Southern this past year. But then you start looking at Grambling. Yeah, they right in the mix. But Prairie View's fallen off. Pine Bluff has not been where we thought they should be. Right? We say there's some talent, but they're not where they should be. And Alcorn hasn't been anything really to marvel out in the East. So, yeah, you're bringing them over to the West in baseball, but I would argue you have 2, maybe 3 programs in the West that are extremely solid, but you know you have 4 solid programs in the East. And then you start adding what Alabama A&M that started pushing the thing. Yeah, some questions about Valley, but for certain, I think you can is without question you have 4 very strong programs in the East and 3 strong programs in the West. So with that, I would give the edge over to the East when you talk about the strength of those divisions, just in terms of what has happened recently. I think you can go back and forth a little bit, but I would give in baseball, I would give the edge to the East as well, Mike.
Dr. Cavil, have you stopped and thought about that SWAC baseball tournament? My goodness.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That is going to be
Actually, I think you have to expand it, to instead of 6 to 8 or whatever. But you can think about if you just topped it off at 6 teams. You could be leaving out a really good baseball program.
Yeah.
right.
In terms of the tournament, if you don't go to 8 teams going into the tournament. But even with 8 teams that we've seen the SWAC have done in the past, you talking about a dogfight to get out of the tournament in terms of champions. There's no such thing as pitching your third pitcher day one to thinking that you can sneak through a game. Nah, not so much. You're going to go with your ace. And go with your ace and let the chips fall where they may and see what you can work with after you get through that first game, because all of that is going to be something. With that, we were trying to get Rob in, but we changed some things, so I gave him the information, and I'm not sure if he's been able to get all in regards to trying to get on the show and get some things going, but we'll work on that for the next week. But check out Rob every Saturday, the last couple of Saturdays. He hadn't the show, but it's my understanding he's coming back stronger than ever. So look for him this Saturday to be back in the mix with the HBCU show, the report there. Also want to give some love out. No Huddle Aspire, hashtag HBCU Game Day, No Huddle. I've been joining the group as a SWAC analyst. So check it out every Sunday for the new episodes debuted last Sunday. So look for episode 2 last Sunday we talked about the move that we're talking about now in regards to division alignment, but we talked about the move with FAMU and then Bethune-Cookman joining the SWAC, and what does that mean for the MEAC. So check out for episode 2. It's going to be promising as well as you get into the news. So just wanted to give you some updates in terms of what's going on inside of that map, if you would, in terms of that. With that, any other sport that we didn't talk about that you say should be really interesting that didn't just jump out there that you think just become that much deeper? I have a couple in mind, but one in particular. But I wanted to see what you all thought in terms of another sport that you want to keep your eyes on before we go any further. Going to you, Mike.
Well, did we talk about track and field? So,
nope, we didn't get into track and field. What are your thoughts on track and field? Alabama State has dominated that. Obviously, you're talking about SWAC with a rich history. You go into Florida, which has a lot of track talent. FAMU, Bethune-Cookman are being in the mix in the MEAC of late. Norfolk kind of ran it for a while, similar that you saw with Alabama State. But yeah, you got to believe that FAMU and Bethune-Cookman are not going to take a back seat to anybody in terms of those 100s. In that it'll be interesting to see what does that mean for the totality of the track program. But I think.
Well, we might have lost.
Yeah, it looks like we got a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of talking about the totality of the programs, with FAMU and Bethune-Cookman coming in, we'll see if there is another school that can kind of break that stranglehold that Alabama State has had on the Commissioner's Cup. Talking about the health of your entire program, so a lot of fun sort of scenarios to take a look at with Alcorn moving to the West, and kind of recap what we were talking about. In terms of the stronger or the strongest, if you will, divisions. Taking a look at the football, when you got Alcorn coming over there with Southern, Grambling, Prairie View brings back 9 starters for this upcoming season. I think they're going to be right there in the mix. And watch this, Mike. Watch this. Arkansas Pine Bluff has a 2-quarterback system, and before injuries kind of decimated them last year, they had knocked off Tennessee State. They were in the mix. They got a 1,000-yard receiver in Harry Ballard. SWAC West is going to be a real difficult tournament, if you will, to kind of crack going forward.
Yeah, I think I wonder if they're going to be like that one division in the SEC. Where you wonder if they're going to beat on each other.
Right, exactly.
The SWAC championship.
Somebody in the SWAC East is going to be licking their chops.
The Golden Lions have a quarterback by committee. Prairie View did bring back, but there's still a question mark at quarterback for them. From a lot of perspectives. So they're gonna beat up on each other. So it's gonna be fun to watch. And going back to the track and field, I guess I asked that from the perspective of, yes, Alabama State has dominated, but now you have a couple of schools in the MEAC who have been good in several areas in track. Like the sprinters maybe from Bethune and FAM that come over. Do they challenge that a little bit more? And also, because they're coming over, if you look at the addition of baseball and track, you mentioned yourself, the Commissioner's Cup. Does that now change the fray for the Commissioner's Cup and who gets it? Because now you have more competitive teams, not only in the fall and in the spring. So I thought that was a great point that you brought up. Does that now change that dynamic now? So,
sure.
Yeah, all sports, when you look at that, I think there's great points by both. Charles, did you get in to say which sport that you said we need to keep our eyes on? I like the idea with Mike saying track and field.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, in terms of looking at track and field, I think Mike hit it on the head, but I was talking a little bit about with additional Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman coming in terms of the totality of your program, is there a program that kind of breaks the stranglehold of Alabama State on the Commissioner's Cup? Because Alabama State has done a tremendous job, in terms of the health of all their programs. So it should be really interesting going forward.
I like that idea of what does it mean for the totality of sports. because obviously you're talking about placement, but if you start turning different teams in that mix, jumping up, how does that do the unbalance in terms of Alabama State? Can they still hold on to those all sports trophies that they have won over the last several years? The other sport I say that you have to look at, I say softball. I think softball has just become
Yeah.
much more competitive in the SWAC
Yeah.
when you talk about that. Obviously, I had a nod, maybe volleyball, but really what stands out to me is softball. You're talking about two extremely strong softball
Strong.
programs
Yep.
coming into the program. And unlike baseball with Alcorn, you've seen some strong softball teams coming out of Alcorn over the years. And so
Mm.
that coming into the West makes the West that much stronger in terms of softball. Texas Southern has had a stranglehold over it. Obviously, Prairie View has jumped in there and got a piece of that trophy over the last couple of years. But then you talk about the East. That should be fascinating to see what takes place now with the softball programs in the SWAC as well. So that was fascinating. Some thought that I had on there that I want to get into. As we
You know, Dr.
start to
Cavil,
come up on the close, I did want to get in some information on two subjects, obviously Florida Memorial, and then want to talk about Norfolk State. As we talked about a little bit about social reform, you've heard a lot of the historically white colleges with players and teams coming out with their statement on different issues of the social justice reform. Obviously, we've seen it with the NBA. We also seen it with the Baltimore Ravens really came out with a significant statement that we talked about last couple of weeks. But Norfolk State Athletics released diversity and inclusion plan. Some of the key points here: the Norfolk State University Department of Athletics recently released a 5-point diversity and inclusion plan aimed at creating an environment that educates, informs, and welcomes individuals from varied backgrounds, belief experiences, and cultures. Norfolk State announced the following steps. Number one, enhancing departments' training and programs to include Title IX, cultural awareness, competencies, and sensitivity training. Establishment of the Spartans Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Establishment of formal alternative compliance procedures for reporting misconduct, racism, and discrimination. Promotion of community engagement initiatives and programs focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice, as well as 5, implementation of a voter registration campaign and election day partnerships. We've seen this with the March at FAMU. Um, Coach Simmons, Willie Simmons, on the football side has been very vocal to this. North Carolina Central's coach, basketball, a lot of ways has been instrumental. But this is the first time I've seen an athletic program actually come out with a plan. I'm going to go with you, Mike, in terms of what are your thoughts on it, the plan itself and having a plan in general in terms of HBCU context, a little different than what we've seen the narrative be out there for a while.
Well, the first piece is for the plan itself. It's very solid. If you look at a lot of companies, or you take corporate America, and you look at their diversity inclusion plans, which, oh by the way, in the last few months have now gone through major overhauls. And if you look at theirs, and then you look at the one by the Norfolk State University, you see a lot of similarities, but you see, a lot of quality and a lot of substance in what they put here, and that's big for an athletic program to put together a diversity and inclusion statement that mirrors and exceeds that of what you see in corporate America or any other institution that is out there. So I thought, in terms of the quality, I applaud them on this effort to do it, and I thought it's very good that they're stepping out, because I don't know of any program, Division 1, 2, or 3, where you have this type of program that has been publicized, at least to my knowledge, that characterizes and captures the enhancement, the diversity D&I goals, values as much as this one has. So, and the other thing about it is they're publicizing it, they're communicating it. They're not putting it in a corner and tucking it away. I did see it on social media. So the only question I would ask is why? What's the driver? not that it's a bad thing, but usually when companies go through and put something together like this, there's something else driving it. If it is just the effort to promote it and to get better, that's fine. If there's anything else, I'd be interested to know it. Also, what's the driver behind it? Someone was pushing this hard to drive it, but I like the way I like the communication. I like the platform that it's on.
No doubt. Before I let you jump in, Charles, with your thoughts, this is the way to make sure you get your information read on the show. Vina Washington says, "Who is the Silky Slim host? I recognize the voice, but can't place him." Laugh out loud. I say, yes, that's how you make sure you get your stuff read. We got Dr.
Yes.
Roderick Holm, the chair of the Department of Mathematics, on here. Jimmy Wilson continues to check us out and breaking it down. So wanted to give a shout out for some of the folks checking us out. What are your thoughts there, Charles?
Yeah, I think Mike just knocked it out of the park in terms of Norfolk State using their platform to put this message out, and that's a very interesting question that you asked, Mike, in terms of what is the driver, because that is something that I guess the public at large will probably just ask in terms of why was it important for the university to use their platform in this manner. So great points that you make, Mike, and I applaud Norfolk State as well. Being out front in terms of being proactive. I'm always say when you're proactive about anything, you tend to reap the benefits of using your research and your knowledge to your advantage. So.
With that, as we start to come to close, I did want to get this information out there. Florida Memorial University announces partnership with the NFL. We talked about them planning to play football and the partnership with BCSN. Now they're partnering with NFL. Florida Memorial is making some moves down there in deep Florida, that greater Miami area. Florida Memorial University Athletics and the NFL announced Monday they will join forces to create educational programming and initiatives as part of the NFL Campus Connections. Florida Memorial is now the fourth school to work with the league under the Campus Connection initiatives. Other program HBCUs include Howard, Grambling, and St. Augustine University. Obviously, we've heard about Grambling with the center, the Doug Williams Center, that they're looking at race, sports, and culture. Yeah, the initiative is part of the NFL ongoing commitment to preparing students at historically black colleges and universities for career in football administration and sports business. Through Campus Connection, the NFL will support Florida Memorial students with career development opportunities, such as an involvement in career fairs, case study programs, and executive leadership series or executive leader series hosted by NFL personnel. Student support will also include participation in the HBCU Careers and Football Forum and consideration for the NFL Experienceship Program, which provides nominated students hands-on experience and networking opportunities. Seems like a great opportunity for Florida Memorial and all those HBCU programs working with Campus Connections. I have to see what we can do with the Texas Southern University Sports Management Program in terms of making sure we get our chance to partner with them. We've had some talks, but we're still seeing what that looks like. We want to do it big, and we want to make sure it's really unique in a different way. So we've played with that back and forth. We'll see if we can make it happen this time. With that, going to you, Charles, what are your thoughts on the Florida Memorial NFL partnership?
Florida Memorial is making big moves down there in terms of getting everything up and rolling with regards to athletics. So I applaud them and everything that they're doing, and applaud our producer. You know, they're doing their football games this upcoming season. So really excited about some of the things Florida Memorial has in store.
Yeah, we're going to have to find a way to get some interviews with some of those in leadership positions down there over the next couple of weeks. With that, Mike, what are your thoughts with Florida Memorial and NFL with the Campus Connection?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I echo what Charles is saying, that Florida Memorial is onto some big things. I think they're the third or fourth school to have some kind of initiative with the NFL. This can big. They've They've had an influx of talent over the few years, football-wise. So I think this is a win-win because it shows that the NFL is willing to partner with a smaller institution, even though Florida Memorial, is I don't know if you can call it a smaller, but in name brand only maybe. It shows their commitment to partnering, at least to some degree, but it's also great exposure for Florida Memorial. And to use the colloquialism, their star is really growing. If you look at the talent that they've had, and you look at initiatives like that are taking place on this campus, this is really big.
Yeah, new facilities, new growth.
Yeah,
Tremendous president down there that obviously in a lot of ways gets it, branding that institution, getting in front of it, getting the name out there, getting a lot of interest with a lot of partnerships to give students opportunities. You can't get much better than that. Football, volleyball, and men's and women's soccer will be played this fall for Florida Memorial. Don't want to leave out volleyball and men's and women's soccer. We talked about the football. But yes, Florida Memorial, is really pushing the envelope in so many different ways. Kudos to them. Thanks for THC Agency for sponsorship of today's episode. THC Agency LLC. THC Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics, values, and products, as well as relevant services to you. With that, let me go to Charles for your final thoughts on the show today.
Yeah, hats off Dr. Cavil in terms of recognizing Lou Brock, Southern man, and like I said, I'm glad we were able to talk about his legacy and what he brought to the game of baseball. First HBCU player to win a World Series. Great interview with Chazz Woodson in terms of learning a little bit more about the game of lacrosse, and just appreciate the platform to really get these HBCU stories out. It's very, very important, and I recognize the gravity of what we're doing here and what Dr. Cavil is inside the HBCU Sports Lab.
Mike, what are your final thoughts on the show today, or for the show today?
Yeah, one final tip of the hat again to Mr. Lou Brock. Icon, did so much for the game, as CB alluded to. So you can't say his name enough without mentioning what he's done for the game of baseball and what his accomplishments in life are. It was great having Coach Chazz Woodson. You basically saw how genuine his passion is for the game of lacrosse and how much he wants to grow the game and reach out to minorities. And it was also just great to kind of go through the plethora of sports related issues, from talking about what's happening in the SWAC to ending with Florida Memorial, with looking at the various impacts on the school. So great show, lots of passion, lots of humility and sharing with the great Lou Brock. And there are a few others who have passed that we really didn't have the time to really pay homage to, but thanks for this platform. It's really great, and it's what makes HBCU sports great.
Yeah, as you said, I'll tip my hat one final time for the show to Lou Brock. 1959 NAIA national champions. As we talk about HBCU sports, when you get those national championships in any sport, it's really fascinating at any level. You do it for HBCU sports. I certainly want to make sure we recognize and I hopefully share some history when you talked about that. I want to give a little kudos also to Grambling University. They played for 2 championships in the early 60s. Ralph Garr played on those teams. They couldn't quite knock down the door. They also obviously lost one of those championships to Sam Houston State. That Southland and Southwestern Athletic Conference rivalry goes back. Many people don't realize when I told you about Texas Southern University playing for the first ever desegregated national championship. They played the Southland team, or what is the Southland team now? McNeese State is the team they lost to, just to give you that historical connection in so many different ways. With that, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues, the show. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports of the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. As we come to a close, we hope you enjoyed the interview with Hampton University men's lacrosse coach Chazz Woodson. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday right here at 6 o'clock Central Time. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Course lecture dismissed.
Course lecture dismissed.